Hey guys, what's up? Ben here with Talking Board Games. First and foremost, I just need to apologize. It's been forever. So just a couple notes of business. Tommy, the other half of Talking Board Games, you might previously remember that he had decided to leave the channel, focus on some other things, his career, his family. Well, now he's also moved. He is now living across the country, so it is just me here, and I have also moved, not across the country, but basically across town. And while that's not nearly as difficult, it has made it more difficult to keep up with the content. So finally things are settling down, and I want to try and see if I can't get some new videos. Well, not necessarily videos. I'm looking at doing maybe more of this audio format. So go ahead and tell me in the comments what you think. Basically, my thoughts are twofold. Recording video is a lot of work, and there are a lot of people who already do it, and I don't really like being on camera anyways. So I'm just maybe going to kind of skip that part and just do the audio. The second part is I, at work, love to listen to board game related content, but have a hard time watching it because, well, I'm working. So, here's something that I would probably prefer to watch/listen to, because I could do it at work and not feel like I'm missing anything. So we're going to try this audio format for now. But anyways, I am coming at you now with what are my top 10 games of 2019. As of recording this, it is January 1st, and reflecting on the year, it's been an interesting one. I didn't play nearly the quantity of games that I did the year before, and I think that's maybe for the better. Both my number of plays went down and my number of games went down. And while I don't like seeing the number of plays go down, seeing the number of games go down did allow me to focus and kind of really hone in on what games I do enjoy and seek those out. And I feel like that really helped make it a more enjoyable year in gaming, as opposed to just kind of sampling everything that the hobby had to offer. I kind of was able to dip into my end of the pool. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and look at the top 10 games that I got to play this past year. And at the end, I will be looking at some honorable mentions, not because they almost made the list, but because they're games that I think might make the list once I get to play them. They're sitting on my shelf, and they just haven't gotten to the table yet, unfortunately. So here we go. Number 10 is none other than Black Rose Wars. Black Rose Wars is done by Ludus Magnus Studios. It's a Kickstarter. Unfortunately, I haven't played this one as much as I want to, but that's partly due to the fact that there is nearly 5 times the content of the base game coming in the Kickstarter stretch goals here in the next couple months. So I kind of don't really want to burn myself out in the base game, because I want to be able to be excited and eager to play with all the new expansion content that's going to be coming. But basically, it is a mage versus mage type battling game. You're moving around this Black Rose Lodge as magicians, learning new spells. The spells can be anything from traps to attacks to summoning evocations and taking control of these other monsters and miniatures and using them to attack for you. There's also objectives that you're trying to take, destroying rooms as you cast these destructive spells. There's a lot going on. It's a pretty in-depth game, but at the same time, it's pretty straightforward. There's a couple ways to score points, but other than that, you're just running around and blowing stuff up. So a fun one, and like I said, I'm really looking forward to the expansion stuff that's coming with the stretch goals to kind of mix up the different types of magic, because your mage is going to focus on one particular type of magic, but you can learn multiple spells from different pools of magic, and all of these are different and unique and interact differently. And the expansion stuff should be including tons of new schools of magic that will change the game drastically, lots of new miniatures. So I'm really excited about that. That is Black Rose Wars by Ludus Magnus Studios. Next up, number 9 is it's a retheming of a game that I have enjoyed, but this one I feel like really implemented some stuff well, and that is Zombicide Invader. Zombicide Invader is a retweaking on Zombicide, and Zombicide Black Plague, and Zombicide Green Horde, and many other Zombicides that I'm sure are going to follow. Basically, this one is set in space, and I wish it didn't have the title Zombicide, because you're not really fighting zombies, you're fighting Xenos, these aliens, and it's misleading when you call it Zombicide. But anyways, don't get me started on that. The aliens that you're fighting are, your typical runners, walkers, fatties, and abominations from the series. But there's a couple twists. You now have indoors and outdoors because you're on like this space station. And when you're outside, you need to have oxygen tanks and any projectile like bullet type guns don't work in space. So you need to have melee weapons or electronic like alien pulse rifle type stuff that you have to find and acquire first. Also, you've got this spread of mold that the abomination is spreading, where now there's spawn points, and so you need to stop the abomination sooner. But they've made this easier by allowing you to do concentrated fire, which is basically you can kill these bigger enemies with smaller weapons, but you have to commit all the dice to it. Whereas before, each die could be used as a hit on an enemy. Now you have to commit these dice to that enemy. And the targeting priorities have changed a little bit, but yeah, it's a really good take on Zombicide. It's not my type of game, so to speak, but if I wanted to own a Zombicide game, and I do for the times when I would try and introduce that to people who prefer that type of game, Zombicide Invader is a really good one to have, and I haven't even touched half of the expansion stuff and the stretch goals and whatnot. So a lot of variability, and I'm really looking forward to digging into that some more. That is Zombicide Invader by Come On. Number 8 is Pipeline by Capstone Games. Pipeline was one that, bless his heart, it was my birthday present from Tommy. Aww. Anyways, Tommy had kickstarted this for me as a birthday present, and I was really excited to get it because I like economic games. I like managing your money. I like the tension that comes from trying to be frugal, but also, not being too frugal. And in this one, you are running in, I guess, an oil empire. The theme's kind of thin, but basically you're trying to buy low, sell high with this oil. But basically you want to buy the crude oil and then refine it, because once you refine it, it's going to become worth more. And there's a couple different levels of refinement. And how you're refining it is by running it through your pipelines. And so you're building is like this mini game, these pipelines with these tiles, and you're trying to keep the pipes. You want them to grow as long as you can, because the longer the segment of pipe, the more it'll refine the oil. And if you can get the pipe segment long enough, it can jump it up a couple levels in refinement, as opposed to running it through the pipe multiple times to get to that higher level of refinement. But that costs an action. But then you also can buy machines that are a flat payment, but then running the machine, you can only do that once. And so now you've got to have a really good pipeline, because you can't. It's really interesting, and it takes some different parts of the genre of economic games and kind of mixes in these mini games. It's got this small sense of worker placement and like actions that you can upgrade through these upgrade tiles. That it's just really unique, and I really like it, and I really want to play it some more because it is a good economic game, and it has the loans and stuff that you can take and the debt. And yeah, so that's Pipeline by Capstone Games. Oh, and Eno did a great job with the graphic design. It's for how heavy and thinky and puzzly it is, everything is laid out really well and really easy to comprehend. My number 7 is the smallest game on my list. And small's not bad, because small means you can probably play it more often. And this is one of my most played games of the year, and that is Twice as Clever, the follow-up to That's So Clever, or Ganshan Clever. I'm not a huge fan of roll and writes. I thought that when I played Welcome to last year that was going to be my definitive roll and write. It had a theme, and I like the idea of having a theme because it made it more easily teachable to others. You're trying to build this neighborhood, and you need to put the fences up and the pool. Everyone wants a pool. It made sense. But after playing Twice as Clever, I feel like this is the preferable game. Probably because without the theme, you can just focus more on what the game has to offer, and that's this wonderful, puzzly, opportunistic dice drafting. you're trying to take these dice in the most opportunistic ways as possible because there's so many combos, and that's where the game gets its name. They make you feel clever. These combos, if I put this number here, that's going to allow me to cross off this number over here, which in turn is going to let me take another bonus action, which if I can get that die there will also, and it just can just go on and on and on. And it's really fun seeing players kind of realize that. And because that theme's not there, it's easier for them to see and focus on those just numbers. That's all, numbers and colored dice. So I'm really excited about that one. That is Twice as Clever by Stronghold Games, and I'm gonna have to get those laminated soon because I'm planning on keeping that around for a long time. My number 6 is by, I guess it's Renegade Game Studios and Garfield Games, but that is Paladins of the West Kingdom. One of my favorite games of all time is Orleans, and it's a bag builder. But what I love about it being a bag builder is it's kind of like a hand management game. As you have those workers that you're pulling out and you're trying to assign them to various actions, you can leave some kind of lingering for a while or maybe not use them that round. But it's, instead of being a deck builder where you just try and use all your cards for the action that it's used for, I feel there's a lot more freedom in Orleans. I get that same feeling from Paladins. Basically, you're going to be getting these workers, these colored workers every round, depending upon which tavern card you draft, as well as which paladin you choose. And those workers you're going to be assigning to various spots on your board that will require those or require a wild. You can upgrade some of the spots, kind of like you do with the technology wheels in Orleans, to make them easier to run if you want to specialize in an action. And you got these 3 tracks that you're trying to maintain because the actions that you want to take will require you to be at a certain level on a track, but also reward you on the track of a different type. So there's a lot of intertwined actions within the game that make it so you can't just fully specialize in one thing. You have to take advantage of all the actions available to you. But once again, you're looking at the opportunity cost of doing so. Really unique game, and it's definitely one of the heavier games put in this line. This one, the West Kingdom, as well as the Raiders of the North Sea. And I like that. Hopefully he kind of sticks to these because I do want to see more of these. The artwork's great and the components are fantastic. So if you haven't checked it out, look out for Paladins of the West Kingdom. Small box, big game. We are now into the upper half. These are the creme de la creme. That's a thing, right? I think I've heard that. But anyways, these are my 5 favorite games from the year. And we will start with probably the second lightest game. Yeah. But once again, because of that, I'm able to play it more often, and it is one of my most played games of the year, and that is Wingspan. Wingspan is just gorgeous. I got to give props to Jamie Stegmaier. He knows what he's doing when it comes to marketing games and making games that people want to either, may not necessarily play, but own. Because, I don't always want to play Wingspan, but I want to own it. And the reason why is because it looks so good and it's so approachable. This is a game that I'm going to be teaching family members and friends for a long time. You pull this out on the table, you hand everyone their nice big board, the beautiful artwork by Beth Sobel. I think that's her name, Beth. Yeah, something like that. But it's just, and then the little eggs and the bird dice towers, and it just looks great. It's easy to understand, but it requires some thought to do well, especially with the end round goals as you're competing with other players. And the cards, you're never going to see the same cards in each game. And it's a good, solid game and one that I'm excited to teach to others. And so I want to have it around on hand, and that's what I've done with it. I don't think I've ever taught this to anyone who was like, oh, that's it? Like, everyone's pleasantly surprised after playing through the game. And so hopefully there's some more good big box expansions that don't just add cards, because I want to see maybe it's more new content for me, because as I'm teaching this to people, I'm playing the game a lot, and I'd like something else that maybe makes me want to play it more, maybe with like a more dedicated game group. But that is Wingspan by Stonemaier Games. My number 4 was one that was actually on my most anticipated games list for this year, last year, 2 years ago. I don't know, it was one of the first top 10 lists I did with Tommy, but anyways, it was a game that the idea really intrigued me, and the Kickstarter came and it kind of got delayed, and it ended up being released this last year, and then they ended up doing a second Kickstarter, including a new expansion. I was all on board after hearing a couple of the reviews and regretting not getting in on the first Kickstarter, and that is Detective City of Angels. Basically, it's like Clue. If Clue was good, and you were playing against not necessarily a traitor, but like a GM or a DM that's running the game. It's really interesting. You'll have a number of detectives, and these detectives are going to be moving around the board, similar like you would in Clue. But rather than just getting to a location and asking, hey, do you have, and you're going to ask his character something. You're going to search the location, or you're going to, pat down the character that's there. And the GM or the DM, who's called the Chisel, is going to be selecting which answers that they give. Sometimes they have to give a specific answer, and this answer may not be helpful, or it may be exactly what you need to hear, but sometimes they have the choice, and they're going to give you an answer that maybe isn't the most beneficial. Not necessarily that they're lying to you, but they're just not telling you the full truth. And as the detective at that point, you have to decide, okay, I think you've got more than that. Let's come on. And you can choose to push a little bit and see if you can get a better answer. And you're rewarded if you're correct and there was a better answer, but then you're also punished if there wasn't. And the Chisel will have some, it's called leverage over you. And he can choose later to not allow you to ask questions and block you from listening in on another player's question. But players are going to go collecting information. The case is going to kind of unravel. And then during the game or at the end of the game, players will have a chance to guess, kind of like in Clue, who was the murderer, what was the weapon or the motive. And it's just really unique, and it's a lot of fun. It's as thematic as a game gets, and the artwork by Vincent Dutrait is fantastic. And so, hopefully that hits retail or becomes more readily available here after this Kickstarter is finished fulfilling. But that is Detective City of Angels by Van Ryder Games. My number 3 is a game that I owned and I got rid of because I knew that a new Kickstarter was coming for. And that's Claustrophobia 1643. I had previously found a copy of Claustrophobia knowing it was out of print and decided to pick it up. Never did I get to play. I think I played it once. And I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but I wasn't sure if it was the right game for me. It wasn't like overly thematic with the artwork and the demons and the troglodyte minis, though they were painted. They were just kind of generic. And the production, while good, kind of seemed a little maybe dated. And I ended up kind of hanging on to it, not sure, but then I sold it because I had heard that they were going to be doing a new Kickstarter for it, and it was going to be run by Monolith. And if you know Monolith and miniatures, they are top notch. And so I missed the first Kickstarter. I hate Kickstarter and I love Kickstarter. It's a bittersweet thing. I didn't have the money at the time and I wasn't sure. It was only a print run. It wasn't selling super well. And so I was like, do I really want this? Do I play 2-player games? So I didn't do it. But thank heavens that they do reprints of these. But this one actually wasn't a reprint. They had leftover copies and they said, hey, we need to get rid of these. We're going to do a second Kickstarter. And after hearing the good reviews that the game was getting, I was like, yep, I need it. So I went ahead and got on the second Kickstarter, and it's everything I was hoping it would be. It is a quick dungeon crawl game, asymmetrical. One player plays as the demons, which depending on the scenario will have a different demon overlord, and then an objective, and then one player will play as the humans. And they're like these condemned prisoners and a redeemer, or he's like a cleric. And they will have an objective as well, depending on the scenario. And it's dice that you're rolling and you're assigning to take actions and stuff. But the board, the tactical nature, despite it just being by tile and not necessarily broken out or grid based or anything, is really unique based on the blocking and movement rules in the game. You can't have certain characters on certain tiles, and you can't leave a tile unless you have the majority of characters on it. And so it becomes very tactical and skirmishy, despite being a very simplistic map. And then as you're trying to plan ahead with the dice, especially as the demon player storing up and preparing and getting ready for future turns, and then the human player doesn't want to burn out too quick, and so they're trying to manage themselves and you don't want to get spread too thin and it's really, really good. Big box, big production, hard to acquire at this point, but if you can, I definitely recommend Claustrophobia 1643 by Monolith. Okay, guys, we are in the top 2. These are the 2 best games that I played this last year. Number 2 is I like the idea of this game so much, and I'm just waiting to find someone who can help it reach its full potential, and it's Cloudspire by Chip Theory Games. Cloudspire is their latest title. They've done a couple expansions for Too Many Bones in the meantime, but Cloudspire is a MOBA style tower defense type game with all of the trappings that come with a Chip Theory's game, in particular like Too Many Bones. So your units are chips. The grid, the hexes that you're playing on are all the neoprene mousepad material. And then you have these awesome faction sheets that are double-sided that go through all of your abilities and the upgrades for your base, your fortress. And the game, it's interesting because it's a very heavy game, not because of necessarily the complexity of the game, but because of the depth that it requires to comprehend how to best play. I guess that sounds maybe similar. Anyways, your turn comprises of buying maybe a new recruit, a mercenary at the beginning, choosing which army or units you're going to recruit, and then stacking them in the order that you want them deployed in. And that's basically it. Then you let them go. But in so doing, these units have special abilities and they interact in unique ways. They're going to upgrade in unique ways. When you collect source from defeating other units or landmarks on the map, you're going to be able to upgrade your fortress with like these tech trees, and then you also got your own spires that you can put out as like a defense system that's going to be firing on enemies if they get too close, and those have different chips that are going to allow them to do different. And there is where the complexity comes in, is you're trying to comprehend how best to play your faction and take advantage of all your own perks, because the factions in the game are drastically different, and it will take some time. Learning one is going to take a couple games, let alone learning all of them. You're looking at a handful of games at the minimum. And then depending on who you're playing, your strategy is going to have to change because, their faction's different. And then their playstyle is going to be different. So there's a lot to explore. What I love is the game's got a dedicated solo campaign where you play through all the factions. And it's very puzzling in that sense because while there is some randomness, most of those scenarios are going to play out pretty similar. And so you become able to predict kind of how the scenario is going to play out. And you just have to figure out what you need to do to counter that. There's also a co-op campaign kind of where you're also playing through some scenarios in a co-op style where you're playing 2 players against the game. But outside of that, you have like 1 versus 1. You can play like a 3 or 4 player free-for-all. You can play like a 2v2. A lot of options. And the production is just fantastic. This is a game that I'm hoping kind of becomes an heirloom item as I'm able to hang on to it and teach people and have it be a 1v1 game that just blows people's minds. So I'm really excited to see what they do, and hopefully there's more factions coming because, well, I haven't even played through all the ones I have, but I'm excited to see where they go with this. That is Cloudspire by Chip Theory Games. All right, we're there. Number 1, the best game from the year 2019, in my opinion. And that is Pax Pamir by Whirligig. I don't know how you pronounce it. Whirligig game. It's Cole Whirl. He's the designer. This is the second edition. So he designed the first edition a couple years back. And as a PAX game, I guess they're famous for being A, hard to get, B, kind of poor production, and C, very complex and largely determined on the player interaction. And I'd always been interested. I heard about PAX games and the hand management and stuff. Sounded like something I'd be interested in, but looking at them, I could never bring myself to try and get one because I figured it'd be too hard to teach anyone. No one would A, look at it and be like, hey, I want to play that, and B, be able to fully understand what was going on. But when I saw Pax Pamir, the second edition, I was like, hey, that looks good. And wait, it's been streamlined a little bit? So basically, the game is set in some Afghan war that's happening in the Middle East, and you have players who are going to be aligned with one of three factions. That is the British, the Russian, and the Afghani. And this alliance that you have can change at any given moment. While you might be loyal to the Afghani at the beginning of the game, 2/3 of the way in the game, you're going to jump ship, and now you're going to join the player to your left, and you are also working towards spreading the influence of the British. And so really interesting, kind of, you need to know when to, because if you're playing with someone and you're working the same faction, you obviously will have a better chance of making that faction dominant or giving the best chance of controlling the board. So that's good, right? But now the points that are awarded are given to the person who has the most influence with that faction. So if that player is ahead of you already and you just join them to help them, and they score more points than you because they have more influence, well sure, you're going to get a couple points, but they're going to get the majority of the points. And the game ends whenever any one player is 4 points or more ahead of everyone else. So there's this real, like, you're walking on eggshells as you're trying not to help anyone who's in a better position than you, but you also are so tempted to ride their coattails because they've set up something good and you can take advantage of it. But that's just like the underlying strategy. You've got hand management, and it's a war game, and so you're fighting on the board, and you've got this tableau of cards that are going to be more actions and trying to take the most from those actions. It's really, really good. And the actions you take are so simple, but in the ripple effect that they cause between you, the players, and the board, and your tableau, and everything, that's where it's hard to fully comprehend the weight of your actions, despite what you're actually doing physically as being very simple. But the production is just fantastic. There's these resin blocks that represent each of these factions, these coalitions, and you're placing these on the board, and they're just thematic, and they look great. And the board is a cloth mat that's unrolled and placed in the middle. And you've got these wooden markers that represent the different regions that you take when you control them. It looks really good, and it plays even better. It's kind of long, and I've had issues with some players I've played with who claim that the king making in it is out of this world. But if you go into it looking at, I'm going to try and do the best I can do, even if that means not getting first, then I feel like it becomes a game that is just really, really good. Definitely my best game of the year. Pax Pamir, 2nd edition by Renegade Games. So there you have it. Those are the top 10 games that I have played and hung on to. A couple of honorable-ish mentions. Not quite the honorable mentions that I mentioned at the beginning, but there's Suburbia, the Collector's Edition, Snowdonia, the Remastered, or the Deluxe, whatever. It's got a long title. Those were good, and I really enjoyed them, but they're kind of just, those games have been out and whatnot. These are new games. Pax Pamir, man. That one's just so good. And it is different enough, I believe, from the first one that you can say that it's not the same game. But now, on to the honorable mentions that I own. They are sitting behind me on my shelf, and I just haven't gotten to play them yet, but I'm curious to see if they do and how high they would jump into this top 10. And those are, in no particular order, Tainted Grail. This one I was really excited for. Kind of got a 7th continent exploration factor, but with more story and character building, and I'm really excited to see. I'm on a fantasy kick right now. I've got a lot of audiobooks that I'm listening to, and I'm just really enjoying it. And I feel like this might give me a chance to play out a fantasy novel, and I'm really excited. Just haven't been able to get to the table. I don't want to solo it. I want to share the experience with someone. I just haven't found someone to do that with yet. So I'm kind of just hanging on to it. Next is Maracaibo. I love Alexander Pfister. I haven't played Blackout Hong Kong, but Great Western Trail and Mombasa are two of my favorite games. And while those two are very different, I like them equally. They're both great at what they do. Great Western Trail definitely being what I would find is the more approachable, game that I would introduce players to, and Mombasa more of the, okay, you've been in the hobby, look at this crazy mishmash of mechanics. And it appears that Maracaibo is just a combination of those. I know I don't want to say that because I've heard a lot of people refute that and say, no, it's not. But I can definitely see, as you're moving this set path and then trying to invest in these couple different countries. But what's different is the hand management and the card and the tableau building that you get in Maracaibo. Also the story legacy-ish elements, as you can play the campaign and unlock different parts of the story that change the board, that change actions, that add new cards. All of that also is really exciting to me. Even though I don't play games that frequently, I feel like a Euro game would be my type of campaign style game. So yes, that is Maracaibo. Also just kind of waiting for the opportune moment to get that to the table. And lastly is Trismegistus. I really like what Board and Dice is doing with their product line right now. And this is a, oh shoot, what's his name? I gotta get the designer's name right because I want to give him credit, because all of his designs so far have just really resonated with me. Daniel Tessini. He had Federico Pierre Lorenzi. But anyway, Daniel Tessini, his games just really resonate with me. I have enjoyed almost all of his that I've played. So I'm excited to give this a go. It is a heavier game that's going to require a larger teach, and I just haven't had the time for that here the second half of the year. So, yeah, there were a lot of games, a lot of games that were put out this last year, and 2020 is going to be no exception. There's going to be even more games that are put out, and I've found it overwhelming, and it gives me a little bit of anxiety because I want to experience everything this hobby has to offer, and I've just come to a reality that I can't, that it's not possible financially, time-wise. For me, it can't be done, and so I'm going to have to pick and choose, and that's what I've done here. And so there are games that aren't on this list that were fantastic, I'm sure, and there are still a lot that I want to hunt down and get a chance to play, but it'll happen if it happens. If it doesn't, then I'm very happy with these 10 games, and I highly recommend that if you haven't played these or you get the opportunity to, take it, because if you enjoy it, you're welcome, and if you don't, I'm sorry. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and let me know if this format was something that you'd be interested in the future. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. It's just less stressful for me, and it's definitely something that I, as a board game enthusiast, would find easy to listen to / watch / enjoy. And yes, well, I know this could be a podcast. That's just a whole nother can of worms that I'm not quite sure I want to jump into quite yet. So I've already got the established YouTube channel, so I figured I'd just run with it. And also this makes it easier because I can share this much more easily on my Friendly Local Game Store's website, where I've been writing articles for them for the last year, and this can be a way I can contribute to that site as well. So yeah, thank you for listening, and hopefully you had a fantastic 2019, and here is to an even better 2020. See ya.